Hello everyone and welcome back. So in today's video we shall begin with the new unit, that is the digestive system. So in this particular lecture we shall cover the introduction to the digestive system. So we shall cover what are the different organs, what are the different functions of digestive system. We will talk about the different layers across the gastrointestinal tract, the peritoneum and the neural innervation of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so coming towards the introduction to the digestive system. Okay, now what exactly is this digestive system and what is the importance of digestive system? Okay, so before going into the actual functions and the actual parts and organs, let us see what is the significance of this particular system in our body. Okay, so basically this system contributes in the homeostasis of the body, okay, by breaking down of the food material, okay, which we consume, so that it is converted in the form of the molecules which can be absorbed and can be utilized, taken up and utilized by our cells. Okay, so usually whatever food we take, what is the main purpose? Why do you consume the food? To obtain the various nutrients which they provide, right? So for our normal functioning of our body, obviously all the nutritional requirements needs to be fulfilled. Also the water, it is also essential for life, right? So this particular system helps in absorbing the water, the vitamins, minerals, okay, which are essential for the body, for the normal functioning of the cell. So if you do not get all these essential substances from the external sources, you will not be able to survive, right? The cells will not be able to survive. Okay, so whatever nutrients and water requirements of the body, these are fulfilled through the digestive system. So it helps in absorption, that is taking up of all these nutrients from the food and breakdown of the food so that these nutrients are available in the absorbable form. Also it helps in eliminating the waste materials which are produced in the body. Yes, obviously whatever wastes are generated in the body, it needs to be removed out, right? So that function is also carried out by the digestive system. Okay, so as I've talked about earlier, the food that we contain, it contains a variety of nutrients. So these nutrients are essential for building of the new body tissues, okay, or new cells, or repairing the damaged tissues. So this is the way by which the digestive system is contributing towards the homeostasis. So anything going wrong, it can be corrected with the help of these substances which can be utilized only when they are broken down and converted into appropriate molecules which can be utilized by our body cells. Okay, so also the food, it is also vital because it is the only source of chemical energy for us, right? We cannot generate our own energy or we cannot generate our own food, right? So we need external supplements that is provided by the food, which can be utilized only when it is converted by the digestive system into suitable type of molecules which can be utilized by our cells. Okay, so these food material, these are converted into appropriate type of molecules, okay, because whatever food we consume, these are too large to be utilized by the body cells. So these are broken down into smaller particles. Further, these are converted into suitable molecules which are small enough to be entered into the body cells. So this particular process by which the food is broken down into simple molecules, this is known as digestion, which is a very important function which is carried out by the digestive system, because of which whatever food we are consuming, it can be utilized by our body cells. Okay, so all these organs which are involved in the breakdown of the food, these are collectively called as the digestive system. Okay, now there is a branch of medical science which deals with the study of the structure, function, then the diagnosis and treatment of the diseases which are associated with the stomach and the intestine. So this particular branch is known as the gastroenterology. Okay, so if you are suffering from any kind of ailments pertaining to the stomach or to the intestine, you should see a gastroenterologist who is a specialist in the study of the structure, function and the diseases which are associated with these two parts, that is stomach and the intestine. Okay, whereas the speciality which deals with the diagnosis and treatment of the disorders which are associated with the rectum and the anus, this particular speciality is known as proctology. Okay, proct means rectum. Okay, so especially those conditions which are associated with the rectum and the anus, which are the terminal parts of the digestive system. So that particular branch is known as proctology. Okay, now coming to the overview of the digestive system. Okay, so let us see what are the different types of organs which are involved in the digestive system, what it is comprised of. Okay, so basically the organs of the digestive system, these are divided into two groups, that is the gastrointestinal tract, or popularly it is known as GI tract. Okay, that is gastrointestinal tract. And the second group of organs collectively are known as the accessory digestive organs. Okay, now let us see what exactly which are the organs included under the gastrointestinal tract. So this gastrointestinal tract or GI tract is also known as alimentary canal. Okay, or alimentary means the nourishment. Okay, so usually it is a tube-like structure which extends from the mouth to the anus. Okay, so it's just like a pipe-like structure or tube-like structure, which will have a lumen, central opening will be there. Okay, just like your garden hose or a pipe which is utilized for watering the plants in the garden. So gastrointestinal tract is also similar to that. Okay, so it's just a tube-like structure, continuous tube-like structure. Okay, so actually it's the exterior part of our body. Okay, but still it is located towards the interior of the body. So internal lumen which is present, it is actually the exterior part of our body. Okay, so continuous tube-like structure is present right from the mouth through the anus. Okay, so the organs of this gastrointestinal tract includes the mouth, most of the pharynx. Okay, pharynx is also a part of the respiratory system, the nasopharynx. Okay, so most of the pharynx falls under the digestive system. The esophagus is the next part. Next one is the stomach. After that, the small intestine, and the last one is the large intestine. So these are the different organs, okay, or the different parts of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so it begins with the mouth and so on, and the last part is the large intestine. Now coming to the length of the GI tract, it's about 5 to 7 meters. So can you imagine the length? Okay, actually your height may be just say around about 5 feet to 7 feet. Okay, but can you imagine the length of the GI tract is 5 to 7 meters, because it's actually long but it is placed in the coiled form. Usually the small intestine, it is quite long. Okay, so it is present in the coil form. We'll see the picture, it will make it more clearer. Okay, so in a living person, okay, that's very important. In the living person, the length of the GI tract is 5 to 7 meters, that is 16.5 to 23 feet. But it is even longer in the cadaver. You know what is a cadaver? It is the dead body which is utilized by the medical students for the study of the anatomy of the human body. Okay. Now usually in the dead person, the length of this particular gastrointestinal tract is even longer. It is 7 to 9 meters. Now why it becomes longer is because usually when the person is alive, this particular muscles which are present in the GI tract, usually they are present in a state of tonus. They have a tone, basal tone, that is sustained contraction. Okay. After the death, these particular muscles, they lose their muscle tone after the death. So that's the reason why the gastrointestinal tract is even longer after the death. Okay. Then the next type of organs present in the digestive system is the accessory digestive organs. Okay, so usually these organs include the teeth, tongue, salivary glands, liver, gallbladder and the pancreas. Okay, now why these are called as accessory digestive organs is because they help in the digestion of the food. Okay. Usually they will not help in propulsion of the food. Okay, or in certain cases the organs may not even come in contact with the food, but they help in the digestion of that particular food which is present in the gastrointestinal tract. Usually the food which you consume, it comes in direct contact with the GI tract, which is the first part as we have seen, the group of organs which we have seen. Okay, so accessory digestive organs will again help in the digestion. Now let us see how they will help. First of all, the teeth which are present in the mouth. Okay, so they help in the physical breakdown of the food. Okay, so when you ingest the food is first broken down into smaller pieces by the teeth, right, by the crushing action. Even the tongue is also an accessory organ, okay, because it will also assist in chewing and swallowing. Okay, so tongue will help in converting the food which you eat in the form of a bolus so that it becomes easier to swallow. Even during chewing, it also pushes the food in between the teeth. Okay, whereas apart from these, other accessory digestive organs do not come in contact with the food directly, but they secrete certain secretions, or they produce and store certain secretions which will ultimately flow into the GI tract where exactly the food is present, and it will help in the chemical breakdown of the food. Okay, physical breakdown of the food is carried out by the teeth. Okay, whereas the chemical breakdown of the food with the help of certain digestive enzymes which are secreted by these accessory organs like salivary glands or liver, gallbladder basically stores the bile. Okay, pancreas, it secretes the pancreatic juice. So all these contain specific types of enzyme meant for digestion of certain type of food. There are carbohydrate digesting enzymes, there are protein digesting enzymes, there are fat digesting enzymes which ultimately help in the chemical breakdown of the food. Okay, so these are the accessory digestive organs. So basically the digestive system is divided into two types of organs: gastrointestinal tract and the accessory digestive organs. Okay, so this is the picture which is depicting the entire digestive system. Okay, so it starts with the mouth, okay, wherein the ingestion of the food or the entry of the food takes place. It is basically comprising of the teeth and the tongue, which further help in the breakdown of the food, okay, and further propulsion of the food. Okay. Salivary glands are present over here, which secrete the saliva, which contains to certain extent some types of digestive enzymes. Of course, we will come to each and every organ wherein we will see what are the secretions, what are the types of enzymes which are secreted, and how the digestion exactly is taking place. Okay, so you can see that there are several salivary glands which are present, parotid glands, then the mandibular, submandibular glands, sublingual glands, all are present over here. Further, the food will move into the pharynx. Okay. From pharynx, it will move further towards the esophagus. So, mouth, pharynx, esophagus, these are the parts of the gastrointestinal tract. So, from here, the food will move into the stomach. Okay. So, liver is present anterior to the stomach. So, that's why it is shown like this. Okay. So, partly the stomach is visible over here. Stomach, it's a J-shaped organ, slightly extended organ, wherein the food which you consume, it is swallowed at a faster rate, right? So, stomach can be distendable to store more and more food, and slowly it will be digested further. Okay. So, from here, from the stomach, it will move into the duodenum. Here opens the secretions from the liver and the gallbladder, which are the accessory organs. So, liver, it produces the bile which is stored by the gallbladder, okay, and further it is secreted into the small intestine. So, here from the stomach begins the small intestine. Small intestine is quite longer in the length, and it is basically divided into three parts. Okay, that is the duodenum, which is the first part. Next part is the jejunum. This is the one, jejunum. You can see the way in which this small intestine is placed. It is highly coiled in nature, right? So, it's quite long. Okay. So, jejunum is the next part, and the third part of the small intestine is the ileum. Okay. And in the duodenum, okay, in this particular curve, again over here, pancreas is placed. Okay, so this is placed posterior to the stomach, so it's not visible over here, but somewhere over here pancreas is present posterior to the stomach. Again, from pancreas, the secretions, the pancreatic juice is again secreted into the small intestine. Okay, so this is to do with the small intestine. Ileum is the last part of the small intestine. From here begins the large intestine. So the food material will further move into the large intestine. Okay, so this is the beginning of the large intestine. It comprises of the cecum. Over here appendix is present. You all must have heard about the appendix, which is actually non-essential organ, okay, which does not have any function excess. Sometimes it may be inflamed and it may have to be removed operatively. Okay. Then from the cecum begins the large intestine. So, large intestine again is divided into several parts. Okay. The first one is the ascending colon. As it is ascending upwards, it is known as ascending colon. Again, from here it makes a turn and it is known as a transverse colon. Okay, this one. And further it moves downwards. It makes a fold and it moves downwards. That's why it is known as descending colon, which is the next part of the large intestine. Okay, and over here again it makes a curve. Okay, so it's a S-shaped curve, so it is known as the sigmoid colon, and further it continues in the form of the rectum. Okay, so rectum, it comprises of the anal canal, this is the one, and the last part is the anus, which is the opening of the gastrointestinal tract towards the exterior, from which the waste material is thrown out of the body. Okay, so this is to do with the digestive system, the location of the different organs. Obviously, we will cover all these organs in detail, wherein we shall cover each and every detail of the organ along with the anatomy, the histology. We will also cover the physiology, what are the different functions of these organs. Okay, so coming to the functions of the digestive system as a whole. Okay, now basically the digestive system, it performs 6 basic processes. So 6 main functions of the digestive system. This include the ingestion, which is the first function. Okay, so its main functions are ingestion, secretion, mixing and propulsion, digestion, absorption and defecation. These are the 6 main functions of the digestive system. So coming to the first one, that is ingestion. So ingestion, it is the process by which the food or the liquids, these are taken into the mouth. Okay, so this particular function is also known as eating. Okay, so entry of your food and the liquids into the digestive system, that particular process is known as ingestion. Second function is the secretion. Okay, so every day a large amount of fluids are being secreted into the gastrointestinal tract by the cells which are lining the gastrointestinal tract, as well as the accessory digestive organs. A total of 7 liters of the secretions are secreted each day into the GI tract. Now these fluids, they basically comprise of water, acid, buffers and enzymes. So all these are secreted into the lumen of the gastrointestinal tract. So these secretions will further mix with your food. They contain digestive organs. They will help in lubrication, propulsion of the food further. So unless and until it is properly lubricated, it will not be able to move further. So that's again a very important function of the digestive system. Okay, so secretion of certain substances which will help in lubricating, mix with the food and help in the further digestion, especially the chemical digestion of the food. Then coming to the next function, that is the mixing and propulsion. Okay, so whatever food you consume, that needs to be properly mixed with these secretions, right? So unless and until it is appropriately mixed, the proper digestion will not take place. Okay, so this mixing, it is carried out with the help of alternative contractions and relaxations of the smooth muscles which are present in the wall of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so this will help in mixing of the food and the secretion. So this will help in the better digestion. Again, one more function is the propulsion. So because of this alternative contractions and relaxation of the smooth muscle, it will help in movement of the food in the forward direction. Always the food is taken up by the mouth. It will further move to the pharynx. It will go into the esophagus, then stomach, then small intestine, then the large intestine. Okay, so the food will never move in the reverse direction unless and until there is some pathological condition. Normally the food will always move in the forward direction, and that is known as the propulsion, and that is carried out by the alternative contraction and relaxation of the smooth muscles which are present, and of course the skeletal muscles also which are present in the certain parts of the GI tract. Okay, so this particular ability of the gastrointestinal tract to mix and move the food material along its length in the forward direction is known as the motility, gastrointestinal motility. It's the property of the GI tract to mix and move or to propel the food in the forward direction. Okay, coming to the next function, that is the digestion. Okay, so as I have already talked about, this is a very important function which the digestive system carries out. Okay, now digestion, it can be mechanical breakdown as well as the chemical breakdown. Both are important. Okay, in the mechanical digestion, the teeth cut and grind the food into the smaller particles. Usually the food which we consume, okay, sometimes it is in the form of larger particles, right? Very large particles. So these needs to be cut and ground into the smaller particles, right, for it to be easily swallowed. Imagine if you don't chew your food properly, you will not be able to swallow it properly, because in the mouth itself the mechanical digestion will start. It will be broken down into smaller pieces. Further, the smooth muscles of the stomach and the small intestine will churn the food. It will break down because of the contraction and relaxation of the smooth muscles. It will further put pressure onto the food particles, and it will further convert it into a still smaller particles, so that it becomes easier. Its surface area is increased and it becomes easier for the digestive enzymes to act on this food, smaller particles of the food, and digestion will take place appropriately. Okay, so as a result of this process of digestion, the food molecules, they become dissolved and thoroughly mixed with the digestive enzymes. Okay, so that these are acted upon by these enzymes and further converted into such type of molecules which can be easily absorbed into the cells. Okay, so unless and until these are broken down into smaller particles and further it is acted upon by several enzymes, it will not be converted into the absorbable type of molecule. So this process is again very important. Okay, there are of course certain substances which are absorbed as it is. They are also present in the absorbable form also, but most of the food particles which are in the larger form, these needs to be broken down. Next function is the absorption. Okay, so whatever food is digested now, it needs to enter our body cells, right? So this entrance of the ingested and secreted fluids, whatever secretions are done in the GI tract, secretion is one of the function, right? So whatever secreted fluids, ions and the products of digestion, all these, they enter into the epithelial cell lining of the GI tract. So this particular process of entry of this, all these substances, okay, whatever ingested material or secreted fluids or ions or digested material, all that enters our epithelial cells, so that it will reach ultimately your blood circulation. Okay, so that particular process is called as absorption. So this is one more important function. Though the digestion takes place in the gastrointestinal tract, unless and until it is absorbed, it will not be utilized by our body cells, right? So this is again important process by which the actual digested material will reach your body cells. Then the last function is the defecation. That is removal of the, this is the process by which the removal of the solid waste takes place from our body. Okay, so whatever waste material which is produced, the indigestible substances which may be present in the food, say for example roughage, it's very important, right, to consume the roughage also. Okay, otherwise you will suffer from constipation. Passage of the stools will not take place appropriately. Okay, so certain indigestible materials are there, certain bacteria or the cells which are sloughed from the lining of the GI tract. Okay, so whatever lining cells are present, they will undergo wear and tear, right? So they will be sloughed off. Okay, they will be shed off and they will be replaced with the new cells. So whatever this sloughed off or shed, the cells which are shed off, these are also removed out of the body. Also the digested material which was not absorbed. Okay, as the food moves further, maybe some amount of digested material might not have been absorbed. Okay, so all these type of materials, these will be removed out of the body through the anus, which is the last part of the gastrointestinal tract. And this particular process of removal of all these waste material, indigestible substances or bacteria or dead cells or the digested material which is not absorbed, so this movement out of the body through the anus is called as defecation. And the eliminated material, it is called as feces or the stools. So this is the waste material, the solid waste which is formed in the gastrointestinal tract. So whatever is required, it is taken up by the body, and whatever is waste material, it is thrown out of the body in the form of feces, or it is also called as stools. So this is the process by which the solid waste is removed out of the body. Lungs remove the gaseous waste, that is the carbon dioxide. It is removed by the process of exhalation, right, by the lungs. And the liquid waste is removed out of the body in the form of urine, which is the function of the urinary system. Okay, so these also we will be studying in the respiratory system and the urinary system. Okay, so defecation, it is a removal of the solid waste from the body. Okay, so these are the 6 basic processes of the digestive system, or the 6 basic functions of the digestive system. That is the ingestion, secretion, mixing and propulsion, digestion, absorption and defecation. Okay. Now, next part is the layers of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so we have seen that digestive system, it is divided into 2 groups of organs, right? The gastrointestinal tract and the accessory organs, accessory digestive organs. Okay, so the gastrointestinal tract, it is a tube-like structure, right? It's a tube-like structure. You can see that this is a tube-like structure. Okay, so it basically comprises of the 4 layers. Okay, throughout your gastrointestinal tract, it is comprised of the wall of the gastrointestinal tract. It comprises of the 4 basic layers, with minor changes in the types of cells which may be present, or the thickness which may be present, or the size which may be present. Okay, but basically these are the 4 layers which will be present throughout your gastrointestinal tract. Of course, we will cover all this again as we study the individual organ of the gastrointestinal tract also, but we'll have a basic idea of exactly what these 4 layers are and what they comprise of, what they are made up of. Okay, so these 4 layers are as follows, from deep to superficial. Okay, so the innermost layer, so it's a tube-like structure, right? And this is the opening. It's a pipe-like structure. Imagine a pipe. So this is a lumen. That is the internal opening, which is actually exterior to our body. Okay, so this is the lumen. Okay. The first layer, as you move from inside to outside, the first layer, it is known as the mucosa. This is the one. Okay, so this is the one. They have shown the sections, okay, so that every detail of each and every layer is visible. Okay, so this particular part shows you the innermost layer of the gastrointestinal tract, that is known as the mucosa. Okay, now basically this mucosa, it comprises of the 3 layers. The innermost layer, it comprises of the epithelium. Next layer is the next to that, the outer layer, the middle layer, sorry, it is the lamina propria. It is known as lamina propria, and the outermost layer, the 3rd layer of the mucosa, is known as muscularis mucosae. Now let us see what exactly it comprises of. As I have told you that there may be minor changes in the types of cells which may be present. Say for example, epithelium. You all are all aware of what is an epithelial tissue. There are different types of epithelial cells, right? You all must have studied. Squamous epithelium, cuboidal epithelium, and so on. Okay. Again, based upon the layers. Again, there are different classifications, different types of the epithelial tissue. So likewise, there are different types of epithelial cells which may be lining the gastrointestinal tract at various places in the GI tract. Say for example, in case of mouth, pharynx, esophagus and anal canal, this epithelial layer, it mainly comprises of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Okay. Main function over here is the protective function, whereas in rest of the areas, okay, that is the stomach, small intestine and large intestine, it is mainly comprised of the simple columnar epithelium. So here in these regions, it usually functions in the secretion and absorption. So the main functions of this epithelial layer is secretion. So certain types of cells will be present which will secrete certain secretions in the lumen, or absorption may take place into the epithelium. We have seen what is absorption. Okay, absorption is entry of whatever is present over here, whatever digested material into the epithelium, right? So it's this epithelium where the absorption takes place. Okay, so there are several types of cells. Again, it might vary depending upon what is the location. So at several places, again, certain openings of some ducts also can be seen, as you can see over here. Okay, so certain secretions will enter through these ducts into the lumen. So this is to do with the innermost layer, that is the epithelium of the mucosa. Next is the lamina propria. Lamina propria usually is comprised of the areolar connective tissue. Okay, areolar connective tissue, this one, this layer. Okay, so basically it consists of the certain types of glands, or the lymphatic vessels or the blood vessels may also be present in this particular layer, that is the lamina propria. Okay, apart from this, there are some small tissues which you can see over here. MALT, that is mucosa associated lymphatic tissues, are also present, which is a part of your immune system. Okay, so this is to do with the lamina propria, which comprises mainly of the areolar connective tissue. Okay, then the outermost layer of this mucosa, it is known as the muscularis mucosae. So basically this layer comprises of the muscles. Okay, in most of the cases it comprises of the smooth muscles. A thin layer of smooth muscles will be present over here. So because of these smooth muscles, this particular layer, it throws this particular layer mucosa into small folds at certain regions of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so this is to do with the mucosa. The next layer is the submucosa. Okay, submucosa is the second layer. Next to the mucosa is the submucosa. Submucosa mainly comprises of the areolar connective tissue. So again, the main function of this layer is to connect the mucosa with the muscularis, which is the next layer. Muscularis is the third layer. Okay, so it connects the mucosa with the muscularis. And here you can see again there are certain types of glands which are present. There are certain blood vessels which are present, okay, which enter into this particular layer. Okay, you can see over here that there are certain blood vessels, certain neurons are supplying in this particular region. Okay, then the next layer, third layer, is the muscularis. So as the name implies, it comprises mainly of the muscles. Now again, depending upon the region, it may vary the types of muscles. Okay, in certain regions like the esophagus, okay, certain parts of the esophagus, the pharynx and the mouth, it mainly comprises of the skeletal muscle, so that voluntary movements are possible. Swallowing, it is a voluntary process, right? You can control swallowing, right? Whenever you want, you can swallow. Okay, so also the skeletal muscles are present in the external anal sphincter, in the anus, so that the defecation is also under voluntary control. Whereas in rest of the areas, in most of the esophagus and the middle part of the esophagus, then the stomach region, the intestines, small as well as large intestines. Okay, they mainly comprises of the smooth muscles. Okay, now this particular muscularis, it is placed in the form of two layers of the muscles, okay, which are differently placed. The inner layer is the circular layer, okay, circular muscle. Now why they are known as circular muscle? These are smooth muscles, but these are circularly placed. The smooth muscles are spindle shaped, right? You all have studied about the muscles. Okay, so difference is that these inner layer, the smooth muscles are placed circularly, okay, whereas the outer layer, it comprises of the longitudinal muscle. So these muscles over here in the outer layer, these are placed along the length of the GI tract. Longitudinally they are placed. Okay, so that's why these are known as circular muscles and the longitudinal muscles, because they are differently placed. So alternative contraction and relaxation of these differently placed muscles will help in mixing and propulsion of the food substance. Okay, so this is to do with the muscularis, and the outermost layer, the fourth layer, is known as the serosa, or it is also known as adventitia. Okay, so serosa, which is the outermost layer, here you can see this, it mainly comprises of two parts: the inner layer of areolar connective tissue, and the outermost layer comprises of the epithelium. Okay, so here simple squamous epithelium is present, which is also known as mesothelium. Okay, for most of the gastrointestinal tract, the serosa, it actually is a visceral peritoneum. Okay, we will come to what peritoneum is, okay, in further discussions. Okay, so in most of the visceral organs, the outermost layer, which is the serosa, it is actually the visceral peritoneum. Okay, so this is to do with the four basic layers of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, of course we will consider all of these as we study the individual part of the gastrointestinal tract. So there are four layers. Innermost layer is known as the mucosa, next layer is known as submucosa, the third layer is known as muscularis, and the outermost layer is known as serosa or adventitia. Okay. The next part is the neural innervation of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay. So there are neurons also which are supplying to the gastrointestinal tract, right? The form of three types. Okay. The first one is the enteric nervous system, ENS as it is known as. Okay, so it comprises of two plexuses. The first one is the myenteric plexus. Okay, myo means muscle, or it is also known as plexus of organ. Okay, and the second one is the submucosal plexus, or it is also known as plexus of Meissner. Okay, now both these plexuses, they supply the gastrointestinal tract, and basically this enteric nervous system, it will control the motility, the GI motility, that is a propulsion, as well as the secretions which are carried out. Okay, so both these are under the enteric nervous system, the control of enteric nervous system. So here you can see that myenteric plexus, it is supplying the motor neuron is supplying the longitudinal and circular smooth muscle layers of the muscularis. What did I tell you about this muscularis layers? The muscle, they contract and relax alternatively to control the propulsion or the motility of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so myenteric plexus, it can control the propulsion by supplying to the smooth muscles. Okay, whereas myenteric plexus also connects with the submucosal plexus. Okay, so there are interneurons which are connecting in between these two plexuses, and further it can supply, the submucosal plexus is supplying the mucosal epithelium. So basically submucosal plexus, it is controlling the secretions which are taking place. Okay, so further these two plexuses will control either the motility or the secretions which are being carried out. Okay, so there are certain stretch receptors which will monitor the stretching, and accordingly it will send the signals. Also there are chemoreceptors which will detect the chemicals which are present in the gastrointestinal tract. Accordingly it will send the signals for change in the contraction and relaxation of the muscles or the secretions which are carried out by certain cells. Now let us see where exactly these two plexuses are located. Okay, so as you can see, the myenteric plexus, it is located in between these two layers of the muscularis. As you can see over here, the neurons are supplying to this muscularis layer. Okay, so basically this myenteric plexus, it controls the propulsive movement by changing the contraction and relaxation of these smooth muscles which are located in the muscularis layer. Whereas the submucosal plexus, as you can see, it is located in the submucosal layer, and further it is innervating this mucosa. So epithelial layers are being supplied by this submucosal plexus, and it mainly controls the secretions. Okay, then apart from that, the next type of neural innervation is autonomic nervous system. That is, the sympathetic as well as parasympathetic system is also controlling the motility as well as the secretions. The parasympathetic system, the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, it is also supplying the gastrointestinal tract to control the GI motility and the secretions. It basically increases the GI motility and the secretions. Whereas the sympathetic nerves, which arise mainly from the thoracic and the upper lumbar regions, this has exactly opposite action to the parasympathetic system. It decreases the GI motility and decreases the secretions also. Okay, so as you can see that there are neurons which are being supplied to the ANS and also to the CNS, and in turn it will control the secretions and the motility through this myenteric plexus and the submucosal plexus. Okay. Apart from this, another neural innervation is the gastrointestinal reflex pathway, which is again controlling the motility as well as the secretions as a part of reflex. Okay. So there are certain stimuli which may be present into the lumen of the gastrointestinal tract, which will carry the signals, and it is a reflex which is not going up to the CNS level. Okay, so at the lower levels, again in the form of a reflex, again the gastrointestinal motility as well as the secretions can be controlled by this reflex path. Okay, so this is to do with the neural innervation of the GI tract, which can control the functions of GI tract. The next part is the peritoneum. Okay, now this peritoneum, peri means around. Okay, so peritoneum, it is actually the largest serous membrane of the body. It comprises mainly of the simple squamous epithelium, okay, along with the areolar connective tissue. Okay, remember I told you that the outermost layer, that is the serosa, it's actually the visceral peritoneum. Okay, so peritoneum basically it's a double layered structure. Okay, so it's a protective layer which is forming a outermost cover for your internal organs. So it is protecting your internal organs. So most of your digestive system organs are protected by this peritoneum. Okay, so this peritoneum, just like your heart, it is covered by pericardium. Okay, in the same way, this peritoneum will cover and protect the internal organs which are located in the abdominal cavity. Okay, so basically this peritoneum is divided into two layers, okay, parietal peritoneum and the visceral peritoneum. Parietal peritoneum actually lines the wall of the abdominopelvic cavity, and the visceral peritoneum, it covers actually the organs. So the serosa, which is the outermost layer of the GI tract, is what we have seen. It's actually the visceral peritoneum which is in contact with the organ. and the space in between these two layers, parietal peritoneum and visceral peritoneum, it is known as the peritoneal cavity. Okay, so sometimes there are certain pathological conditions wherein fluids may accumulate in this peritoneal cavity, and that condition is known as ascites, okay, which may be seen in the cases like cirrhosis. Okay, ascites is quite a common symptom which is seen over there. Okay, so this diagram will make it more clearer, okay, what exactly this peritoneum is. So as I've told you, it's a double layer structure. So all of abdominopelvic cavity, it is lined by the outer layer of the peritoneum, and that layer is known as parietal peritoneum. Okay, this one, the outer lining. Okay, so that is known as the parietal peritoneum. Whereas the second layer, which is in contact with here, this is the mid-sagittal plane. Okay, so these are actually your small intestines. Okay, this is the uterus. This is a sigmoid colon. This is a transverse colon. This is your stomach, liver. Okay, so these are again covered by the second layer of your peritoneum, and that is known as the visceral peritoneum. And in between these two layers is present the peritoneal cavity. This is the one. This entire thing is the peritoneal cavity. Okay, wherein the intraperitoneal injections are done. Okay, so this is to do with the two layers of the peritoneum. There are certain organs which are located posterior towards the parietal peritoneum, so that they are covered by this peritoneum only on one side. Okay, so they are located posterior, behind. Okay, such kind of organs are known as retroperitoneal organs. So examples of retroperitoneal organs are kidneys, ascending and descending colons of the large intestine, the duodenum of the small intestine, and the pancreas. These are retroperitoneal organs. That is, they are present actually behind, so that they are covered with the peritoneum only on one side. As you can see over here in case of pancreas, only one side it is getting covered with the peritoneum. Okay, so it's actually located behind the parietal peritoneum. Okay, even the kidney is also same way. Okay, so these organs are known as retroperitoneal organs. Actually, in the body, there are 5 main peritoneal folds. Okay, so there are folds of the peritoneum which are present. Okay, so these are the greater omentum, the falciform ligament, lesser omentum, mesentery, and the mesocolon. Okay, so let us see one by one where exactly these are located. Okay, so coming to the greater omentum. Okay, so greater omentum, it is a fold towards the anterior side, as you all have seen over here also. This is the one. Okay, so there is a forward fold over here, right? There is a double fold. Okay, so this is the greater omentum. Okay, so this is how it will look like from anterior side. Okay, so it is the largest peritoneal fold which drapes over the transverse colon. This is transverse colon, so it is draping from here. Okay, so it also coils of the small intestine which is located over here. Okay, so this is to do with the location of the greater omentum. Okay. Then the second type of fold of the peritoneum is the falciform ligament. This is the one. So this particular fold is actually attaches the liver to the anterior abdominal wall. This falciform ligament, this fold of the peritoneum, it will attach the liver to the anterior wall and the diaphragm on top. Then the next type of fold is the lesser omentum. Okay, so here the gallbladder and the liver, these are reflected upwards. So these are raised so that this lesser omentum is visible. Actually, it is located posterior towards the liver and the gallbladder. Okay, so this is the lesser omentum. So lesser omentum, it arises as an anterior fold in the serosa of the stomach and the duodenum, which is located over here. Okay. Okay, so its main function is to suspend the stomach and the duodenum from the liver. Okay, so from here it will suspend the stomach and the small intestine, the first part of the small intestine, that is the duodenum. Okay, then coming to the next fold, that is the mesentery. Okay, so as you can see over here, now here the greater omentum has been reflected upwards so that the mesentery is visible. Okay, so mesentery, it is actually the fold of the peritoneum which is fan shaped, which actually binds the jejunum and the ileum, which are the next two parts of the small intestine. It attaches these two parts of the small intestine to the posterior abdominal wall. Okay, this is the one. You can see over here, mesentery. So it is actually holding these parts of the small intestine and it is attaching it towards the posterior wall of the abdomen. Okay, then there is one more fold known as mesocolon. This is the one. So mesocolon, actually this fold, it binds the transverse colon. This is a transverse colon, right? Okay, so this is a transverse colon. So this particular fold over the transverse colon, it holds this, or it binds this transverse colon towards the posterior wall of the abdomen. You can see over here, it is attaching this transverse colon to the posterior wall. So what you can conclude from all this, what is the main function of the peritoneum? What is the significance of this peritoneum? It's no doubt it is forming a protective layer for all the abdominopelvic organs, visceral organs. Plus it helps in maintaining the position of all these organs. So it is helping in attaching all these internal organs to the walls of the abdominopelvic cavity, and it's helping it to maintain its position, correct position, right? Okay, so this is to do with the peritoneum, a brief introduction to the peritoneum. This is the reference. In the next lecture we shall begin with the actual organs of the digestive system. Okay, both the organs of the gastrointestinal tract as well as the accessory digestive organs. Thank you for watching.